Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, it is 6:07 on News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We are making sense of the news. Good Thursday morning to one and all. We got all kinds of stuff going on the show today. We're going to be talking about Kamala's record on the border and what's going on in Fairfax, too, with Mark Krikorian. He's the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies, joining us later in this hour. Matt Foldy, who's the editor-in-chief of the D.C. Reporter and a reporter for The Spectator, to help us break down exactly what's the story with what happened at Arlington on Monday and the fallout from that, if you can call it fallout. I'm not sure you can. KT McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump, the author of Revolution, joining us in the 8 a.m. hour, as well as Link Lauren, who's a former RFK Jr. advisor. She's an internet personality. He's an internet personality. On the CNN interview tonight, Kamala Harris talking about that. You are listening to O'Connor and Company. I'm Andrew Langer. In for Larry O'Connor alongside Mercedes Schlapp. Good morning, Mercy. How are you?
Wow, that was like the quickest hour, Andrew.
I listen.
Totally awake, which is shocking. I haven't even had my first cup of coffee yet.
There you go. So you need the Mio energy to sort of do this. But you're right. We get all kinds of pumped up. Joining us right now is Cherise Trump. She is the executive director of Speech First. Want to chat with her? So it is. Well, listen, Cherise, it's back to school time. We all know this. I have one who just got out of college, but one who just started college classes yesterday. And obviously we could talk about what's going on college campuses, but let's open up with the student loan news and the Supreme Court. The Biden-Harris administration tried another end run around the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said no. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is just another attempt at the Biden-Harris administration trying to buy votes from the younger population, basically saying we're going to forgive your student loans with no consequences attached. No one's going to be held accountable in the process. Taxpayers are going to be forced to pay your debt, to pay for what the colleges have done to you, because we all know the universities have had a steep incline over the years with their college tuition rates, compared to what traditional inflation rates, even this last couple of years with the steep inflation rates, you've still seen colleges go much, much higher than what the inflation rates are every single year. They increase their tuition costs. And they're getting away with it. And they let students get degrees in gender studies, and students can't get jobs after that. And then the government comes in and now is trying to pay off the colleges, essentially, for ripping the students off. So the biggest concern here is, yes, there are states who sued, and the Supreme Court, the government appealed to the Supreme Court, and the court basically said, look, we're going to wait till the circuit courts figure this out. We're not going to hear this one right now. And that meant that whatever was determined so far in the circuit levels and district courts is going to stand. So that's where you're getting a bit of a discrepancy. So right now, all of the students on what is called the SAVE plan, which is what the Biden-Harris administration is trying to get through, their loans are on a temporary hold right now. So they're not technically affected by this directly, but other than the fact that they don't have to pay off their loans currently without accruing interest. So that is all on pause, essentially, as they are in the attempt to finish paying off their loans, because they did already start before the lawsuits happened.
I got to ask you this, Cherise. When you look at the Supreme Court and their decision, I mean, this is a constitutional argument to a large extent, if not total extent, because the reality is that it's the federal agencies. There was money that was allocated that, obviously Congress really had no say. Can you walk us through from the constitutional standpoint why, the Supreme Court ruled this way for now?
Yeah, well, the Supreme Court specifically was not answering the constitutional question directly. They were more saying whether or not they think that they should be taking the case. But yes, you're right in that this is a bigger question with regards to what is the role of the executive branch with regards to congressional acts, right? And this is something that is what's called the major questions doctrine, and
right.
It has come up a number of times. We saw it with the Chevron deference case more recently, where the court did put a check on that. And so, yes, this is going to keep coming up as an issue because we see things with like Title IX and various other federal policies and laws that are coming out where it's based off a congressional act, such as in this case, they're trying to use the an Education Act from the Johnson administration, but
Wow.
they are manipulating it and twisting it in a way that basically says, yes, okay, so we have to, what this act said is that we have to base interest rates and payment rates off of income rates. And that, in a way, makes sense, but they want to manipulate it so that it actually leads and lays the groundwork to completely forgive the loans. So that's very different than what the initial act was meant to do. So this question is, are they taking what Congress said is okay and expanding it to have huge economic and legal impact on what's happening with the law, where it completely changes what the law actually meant to do? And that's where the question comes into play here.
So, listen, we're talking with Cherise Trump, the executive director of Speech First. SpeechFirst.org is the website. Listen, last week, Michelle Obama talked about people failing forward. Liz McGill, would, to me, seemed to be someone who failed forward. She left University of Pennsylvania as president and is now joining Claudine Gay at Harvard. I mean, and this along the backdrop of the fact that anti-Semitism has not been cured on these college campuses. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, no, I think this is, it's sad to say that I'm honestly not super surprised that Harvard, of all places, would take her. It doesn't, it was, I think, a shock to everyone to find out that even though Claudine Gay was no longer president of Harvard, she was still going to be teaching and making, like upwards of $700,000 a year.
Wow.
So she's still benefiting off of this, even though she was clearly proven in plagiarism and has basically what should be a shamed academic fallout. She still is making a lot of money off of the academy and being rewarded for that, as you said, failing up. And same thing with Liz McGill. Luckily, Liz McGill, as far as I understand, she's not going to necessarily be teaching courses. It's more of a research role on, I think it's Harvard School's Center on Legal Profession. We'll see what that actually produces.
Whatever that is,
it
yes.
might just honestly be a place to house her so she just doesn't have, she's not jobless. I don't know if she'll actually do anything. It's very possible this just could be like a coded retirement for her. But ultimately, yes, you're right. She did a terrible job with the anti-Semitism that was happening on her campus. University of Pennsylvania had some serious incidents, and even long before October 7th was struggling with a lot of anti-Semitism on that campus, and she really seemed very, very uninterested in solving the problem.
Well, listen, Cherise, thank you so very much for joining us today. Cherise Trump, no relation to Donald Trump. She's the executive director of Speech First, SpeechFirst.org. Have a great Thursday.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So, Mercy, last week at the DNC, Kamala Harris said something. I mean, she rarely would talk about substantive issues. It was always maddening. She said something last week, this idea of you can have both, a secure border while at the same time finding a so-called pathway to citizenship, however she termed it. And my immediate reaction was, well, no, because if you are encouraging people to come to America illegally, it makes it that much more difficult, if not impossible, to secure the border. Now we got California, this story out of California. California lawmakers approved down payment handout to illegal immigrant homebuyers. So here, if you come here illegally, not only are we going to give you education, we'll give you health care, we'll give you cell phones. Now we're going to give you a down payment to buy a house. I mean, we are really in crazy times, are we not?
This is something, and the thing is that we have to understand all these Democrat crazy policies always start in California, pretty much. I mean, so it's the mere fact is that this would be a good question to ask Kamala Harris. Would you approve? You saw what's happening with the California lawmakers. Would you approve $150,000 of a down payment handout to illegal immigrant homebuyers? I mean, this is purely insane. Not only, this is where I don't understand how the people of California could ever vote for a Democrat. Ever, Andrew.
Right.
And to give them a down payment of $150,000 to people who came here illegally is just going to encourage more illegal immigration. Do you imagine the ads, the digital ads, like the ads back in Latin America saying, keep coming because you're going to get $150,000 as a loan to get a house? I mean, this is insane.
It's interesting because as we look at this and we look at this issue, you wonder about the constituencies, right? And it gets into this issue of illegals voting and voter integrity projects and how we go about doing this. You have a legislature that is supposed to represent their constituencies. And I don't know who is lobbying for this. I mean, this is the thing that gets me, right? Where are the advocates? Who are the advocates for this? And what are they saying? Like you and I both know, we've known folks in the lobbying world. We've been lobbying adjacent. I know that when I worked for NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Business, I had to talk about my members and what my members wanted and how the relationship between what my members wanted and why it was important to these legislatures in terms of their vote. I can't imagine that you have regular lawful voting constituencies in California who are saying, yeah, a Democrat-controlled legislature, we want you to take our hard-earned taxpayer dollars and turn around and give $150,000 down payment assistance to eligible first-time home buyers. And it easily cleared the state Senate on Tuesday by a 25-14 margin, and then approved by the Assembly in a 45-15 vote. Democrats enjoy supermajorities. Is this just pure politics, or is something driving this, do you think?
I mean, are they taking care of our veterans? Are they taking care of, families, American families that have lived in California and can barely survive on their paychecks? I mean, California is facing $46 billion budget deficit last year. This is not something that obviously they cannot afford. And to expand this state-funded home loans, to illegal immigrants, I mean, it's just putting a financial burden on these taxpayers. I mean, just think about that. There's people who are working there that are paying taxes, American citizens, American residents, yet you're giving the benefit to these illegal immigrants. It's insane.
And time out for a second. Now, I don't know what the median home cost in California is these days. I guess go look at that. You never do math on the air, by the way. I'm about to do some. But we know that home prices generally are up in America since Biden and Harris took office. Started at $307,000, now up to $426,000, $427,000 almost, almost a 40% increase here. But just to do a little bit of math real quick, Mercy, the program is called the California Dream for All Loan Program, which provide up to 20% down payment assistance. So 20% up to $150,000. That means that if you're an illegal immigrant and you want to buy a home that is worth 5 times that, so that would be $650,000.
Yeah.
Now again, I don't know what that buys in California. It doesn't buy a whole heck of a lot in the DC area, depending on where you are. But a $650,000 home that you're buying, I mean, that also is, who are these people? And could they not have come to America legally?
Andrew,
I guess is my
you
question.
asked what the median home price in California.
Yes.
Well, it rose to more than
There you go.
$900,000, setting a record for the state. That average has risen 11.4% since April of 2023. Just think about that. So even if you get the loan, you can't even really buy a home. I mean, it's so expensive. It's outrageous.
No, and that's exactly it. I mean, and again, it also evinces this complete misunderstanding of the way that economics works. When you have a guarantee of a basic price for something, it drives up the price everywhere else. Again, I think you're right. Right? If California didn't have the Pacific Coast, if it didn't have the Sierra Nevada mountains, if it didn't have Lake Tahoe, if it didn't have all of these things that make it an attractive place to live, right? I don't know why anybody would want to live there. We've got so much more to get to. Right now, it's 6:23 here on WMAL. It's not hard to figure out. This is not rocket science here. This is just basic macroeconomics of supply and demand with regulation thrown in. You don't need to give housing benefits to illegal immigrants if you want to try to bring down the cost of housing. You build more housing. You find ways to build more housing where people who want to do it. Someone who doesn't understand the economics of this is Wes Moore. Maryland makes it very hard to build houses, whether it's state regulations or whether it is local regulations. But Wes Moore's going along with this happy horse pucky that Waltz and Harris and California are proposing. Let's hear what Maryland Governor Wes Moore had to say about this.
Creating access to affordable housing and creating a better chance for people to become home buyers. Create a better chance for people to pass something off to their children besides debt. Create a better chance for people to own more than they owe. This is the country that we hope for. This is the future that we're willing to fight for. This is what we're doing in the state of Maryland, and this is why we'll do everything in our power to make sure that we have a President Harris and a Vice President Waltz that is going to help us to make this journey together. Creating access to affordable housing and creating a better chance for people to become home buyers.
Listen, we've been down this road before, by the way, with creating the conditions where more people can become home buyers. I'm using air quotes, but we're on the radio, so you can't see me do this. And what did that lead to? It led to the housing bubble. It led to the collapse. It led to huge economic hardships in America back in 2008, 2009. Wes Moore, Harris, and Waltz want more of this. No, the way you do it is you build more housing. That is how you go down this road. Listen, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about California's giveaways. We're going to be joined by Mark Krikorian from the Center for Immigration Studies. He'll be coming up in the next half hour. And the next hour, listen, we got to unpack what's going on, what happened with Arlington Cemetery. Donald Trump tries to do something nice. The left pushes back on that in a very, very big way. I am Andrew Langer. She is Mercedes Schlapp. This is O'Connor Company, and it's 6:30 right here on WMAL.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:37 here on News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We are making sense of the news. Good Thursday to one and all. I am Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor alongside Mercedes Schlapp. Good morning, Mercy.
Good morning, Andrew.
Listen,
we've
got
Larry, but Andrew.
It's okay. You and I can be interchangeable. I aspire to be young Larry O'Connor.
Young. Yes. So young.
We have all kinds of things coming up on the show today. Matt Foldy joining us in the next hour from the Spectator and the D.C. Reporter to talk about this Arlington Cemetery kerfuffle. KT McFarland joining us in the 8 a.m. hour to talk about national security issues. And Link Lauren, former RFK Jr. advisor and internet personality, to talk about this interview tonight that Kamala Harris is doing with Tim Walz. Joining us right now is Mark Krikorian. He is the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. And Mark, I mean, listen, there was a moment at the DNC last week, and I talked about this earlier on the show. Kamala Harris said two things that two great tastes that don't go well together. She said that we can have border security, but at the same time we can find a pathway to citizenship for those who skirt our laws. She didn't say skirt laws. She goes, but those who don't follow the rules to come here. You can't have both at the same time, and you can't do it if you're California and offering $150,000 in down payment assistance, can you?
No, you can't, because illegal immigrants are rational people, and they're kind of figuring the odds. What are the odds I'm going to get in? If I get in, what are the odds they're going to let me go? What are the odds I'm going to find a job? That kind of thing. And so this administration for 3.5 years has been, telegraphing around the world that the odds are really good. If you get in, if you get across the border, it's going to be easy. If you get across, we're going to let you go. And once we let you go, there's a whole bunch of places that will, give you driver's licenses, give you subsidies, give you free room and board. Of course, people are going to take us up on that offer. They'd be crazy not to.
We've seen,
go ahead,
Mark,
Mercy.
that Kamala Harris has, now trying to appear as she's really a border czar that's strong on the border, now mentioning that she would, in essence, fund the wall. Obviously not a lot of the wall, but this is something that Kamala Harris referred to as a vanity project for Donald Trump to build the wall. Why is there this sudden shift coming out of Kamala Harris right now?
I think there's an election coming up, isn't there, in November?
Yes.
I mean, and the thing is, she hasn't even come out and said she's for the wall. She hasn't even had one of her assistants anonymously say she's for the wall. Reporters have just said, it looks like from what she said here, that means she's for the wall, so let's make a big deal of that. She's not. It's phony. And, this is a phony flip-flop, as I wrote in the New York Post recently. But it could be a real flip-flop. People change their minds. Politicians do it all the time. And so I'm open to that. But if you're going to do that, the way she would have to do it is have a press conference at the border. Say, we were wrong about this. We really need more of this wall. And, come out and say it with her own mouth. And, maybe you could believe her. Right now, it's completely fake.
We're talking with Mark Krikorian. He's the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. I was on the air last week, Mark, and talking about Kamala, and Kamala saying, remember, when she ran for president in 2019, she said that welcoming those folks who want to migrate here illegally is a moral and ethical obligation. And then she quickly pivoted, when she became vice president and told folks not to come here, as was pointed out to me. And this is right, pointed out by a listener. You can change policy, right? You can change, where things want to go on policy. But when you talk about changing your ethics and morals, it becomes across as a little less credible here. Talk about this. Talk about the ethics and morals that are at work here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, actually. Again, like I said, people change their minds. But if you're talking about some policy, like basically de facto open borders as being a moral imperative, you've got a lot more explaining to do. In other words, why did you change your mind? Again, people change their minds, and frankly, politicians, they're weather vanes to some degree. But when you like the vice president, you've literally renounced almost every single position you've ever had in order to get reelected. It's incumbent on you to explain why. What was the thought process? Why did you believe it was immoral to keep illegal aliens out of the United States before? And what has changed? Have you undergone some, religious conversion?
Conversion
like
on the
St.
road to
Paul
Damascus. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, on the road to Damascus. So, maybe, but
Yeah.
if you're not explaining it that way, why on earth would anybody believe a word out of your mouth?
Please help me explain how this Fairfax County here, very close to where I live, and the Virginia sheriff refusing to work with ISIS, basically signed a policy that says that if the sheriff's office receives an immigration detainer and the illegal immigrant has been identified as eligible for immediate release and has a scheduled release date, I shall not be notified, and the inmate would be released into the streets. I mean, this is allowing for dangerous criminals to be released into Fairfax County because they will not cooperate with ICE.
Yeah, when people talk about sanctuary city policies, that's what they're talking about. Protecting criminals from the consequences of their actions. And understand, this isn't about, say, the Fairfax County police walking around, Bailey's Crossroads and saying, hey, where's your green card, pal? No, this is people who are arrested for regular crimes.
Right.
And then ICE finds out they're deportable, says, according to federal law, they're allowed to do this. Please hold on to them for up to 48 hours when you're done with them so we can come and get them. And then Fairfax County says, no, we're just going to let them go. It's protecting criminals. That's the only thing sanctuary policies do. And it's outrageous. And frankly, I live in Fairfax County. I don't want them letting these people back onto the streets.
No, here. Mark, listen, we have to leave it there. Mark Krikorian, Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies. CIS.org is the website. Thank you so very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Take care. We got more coming up.
Later this morning on the Chris Plant Show, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to sit down with CNN's Dana Bash. Which one will come out the biggest loser? 9 a.m. on WMAL.
You know, Mercy, did you ever see the movie in the 90s, PCU? Remember this?
No.
Jeremy Piven? No, it's a great movie.
Look,
very
I grew
telling.
up in Miami. I was like watching telenovelas. Like
Very,
give me a break.
very,
I didn't
very.
watch those movies.
It was a great prediction of what was to come in the world of PC. And there's a line about you try to do something nice for somebody, and the PC shock troops come out and they protest you. Here we have a situation where Monday was the anniversary of the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan under Joe Biden, sending a signal, by the way, to America's adversaries around the world that things were weak at home and they pretty much had free license to do whatever they want. People lost their lives. The Biden administration said nothing, has said nothing. President Trump goes to Arlington to engage in a wreath ceremony to honor those who gave their lives in support of America's mission there. And, of course, the left has to create a controversy over this. We're going to be joined, by the way, Matt Foldy later on to talk about this in the 7 a.m. hour here. But this is – I mean, we could have predicted this. Whatever Donald Trump does, the left has a problem with, don't they?
Well, and, of course, guess who's reporting this? NPR.
Oh, yes. NPR, of course, yes.
Taxpayer-funded communist radio station. And it's basically an NPR source said that a cemetery official was pushed and verbally accosted as they tried to block campaign aides from taking these photographs. You know, of course, then you've had the Trump campaign communications director, Stephen Chung, basically saying there was no physical altercation as described, that the campaign was given permission to bring a photographer. So it wasn't in any way like the president who has been defending these Gold Star families, who has been speaking up on these 13 servicemen and women who tragically lost their lives because of the Afghanistan withdrawal fiasco led by Joe Biden. The last person in the room to agree to this was Kamala Harris.
Right.
And then they make this into, quote unquote, the incident that happens at Arlington Cemetery. I mean, just as it's so predictable with the leftist media, how they take something that the president's doing to honor the lives of these men and women who tragically died in Afghanistan and turn it into, a physical altercation that occurred at, changing basically the headline, the Chiron.
Well, it's interesting to me. I had a conversation yesterday with Curtis Houck from Newsbusters, the Media Research Center project, about this issue of the reporting and the record positive reporting for Kamala Harris, approaching 90% positive for Kamala Harris and approaching 90% negative for President Trump. It's one of those things where there's nothing that President Trump can do that satisfies the leftist mainstream press. Yeah. And so, it's all of this stuff. But, remember the theme. Well, you were watching the DNC with great intent because you were doing great media last week for Newsmax. What do they call it? The muscular patriotism of the DNC. Oh, my
goodness. Wow.
Right?
They were chanting USA, which I thought they were chanting USSR.
Right.
I swear. I was like, what? They're chanting USA, the Democrats? They never do that.
But they're doing it right now because it's the big lie, right? The big lie is that there's this patriotism while they denigrate Donald Trump and call his patriotism phony. And yet here we have the service members who gave their lives because of the decisions that were being made by Harris and Biden. And yet, has Harris said one word to any of these families? No, she hasn't. Donald Trump goes to Arlington National Cemetery to lay a wreath and to give support and comfort to those families. And what is the story? The story is a made-up story that's unsourced via NPR that some kind of altercation happened. And by the way, the Trump campaign has said, we have video. We're happy to release this video. Yeah. Oh, and NPR never reached out to any of those families, did they, Mercy?
No, they did not. And, this is where Matthew Foldy, who's been working closely with these and covering these Gold Star family, members and their stories. Basically, Matthew Foldy said this is an insane piece on the phone with one of the Gold Star family members who was at Arlington with Donald Trump. I'm told that none of them were reached out by NPR prior to this garbage. So, then of course you saw that the Gold Star family put out a statement expressing their appreciation to Donald Trump for going out there. Of course, that won't be covered, at all by the media. It's all about this photographer moment, and which is just outrageous. That's all that CNN and NPR that they're covering.
And something, we got a couple of seconds here. I want you to hear, this is Michael Taylor, who's a campaign spokesman for the Harris-Walz campaign. Here is his take on this. Let's play cut number 5.
There was some kind of incident that took place. What kind of questions do you have?
Frankly, I think this episode is pretty sad when it's all said and done. Listen, this is what we've come to expect from Donald Trump and his team. Donald Trump is a person who wants to make everything all about Donald Trump. He's also somebody who has a history of demeaning and degrading military service members, those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. We know he's referred to them as suckers and losers. We know that he belittles the Medal of Honor. And so, frankly, this is, while sad, it's not surprising coming from the Trump team.
You know what? All right, we can end it there. You know what denigrates members of the military? Well, besides putting them in harm's way needlessly, and engaging in a strategy that guarantees that there are service members who are going to die, then not acknowledging your mistakes and not acknowledging those who gave their sacrifice. That's what denigrating service members is all about. And how dare the Harris-Walz campaign engage in this kind of chicanery? More to come at 6:53 here on O'Connor and Company, WMAL.